it is Mona here at Craft Klatch. Today we're going to make a fun Halloween decoration using dollar store items. For this Halloween craft, I have this, I believe it's like a terrarium. It's like a hanging terrarium. It looks like an ornament to me. It has a hole here and a big old hole here. So I thought it'd be fun to use it to make a Halloween craft. And this is plastic. Got it at the dollar store. It was $1. What I like about it is it could be sitting on a table as a decoration, or you can hang it, which is always fun. And we are going to turn this terrarium planter into a Halloween decoration. I'm going to start with some acrylic paint, and I'm going to use black, and this happens to be metallic, but it doesn't need to be metallic. You can do whatever paint you want to do. If you've ever done the Christmas ornaments where you put the acrylic paint inside, this is going to be kind of a similar effect. We'll see how it works out. So you squirt it in and just start moving it around. You want to make sure you cover everything. And just remember, as you're moving around, there's a hole here. So you're going to want to just kind of be aware of that too. Just be patient as it oozes around. If you start to get some oozing out, don't worry. Just take a paper towel, wipe it off, and then hold the paper towel there. Now, when you get it all pretty well covered, you want to put it on a glass and just have it start to drip out. And hopefully that will allow it to cover the rest of the inside on the way out. Otherwise, we can touch that up with a brush later. And then you just want to let that sit and dry. And it'll continue to seep out for quite a while. This is dried, and I was hoping that I would get some cracks and stuff in here, but it actually dried perfect. Like, I don't see any place where there isn't paint covering it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a skewer stick and kind of create my own cracks. And I'm just going to scrape it along the inside. And all I'm doing is removing some of the paint. And it'll be tough to see for a while until I get some of the paint off. And it can be random. I'm kind of going up and down, but not like straight up and down. So hopefully it'll have a little bit of a random look to it. Or your other option is going to be like your craft knife. That'll cut right through as well. It'll give you a finer cut, but it will cut easier. I don't know if you can see the cracks starting. And you can certainly do a combo of the two as well, which is probably what I'll end up doing. Now that I have it scraped up, and you can kind of see it in there, and I think it's scraped up enough, and you can always do more or less depending on whatever you feel you want to do. Now I have some red acrylic paint, a nice bright red, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to put it in here and start just rolling it around. And hopefully you'll be able to see the red through the cracks. See? You can see them already. So I'm going to make sure it gets everywhere. Again, patience is your friend. And if you want to take a paintbrush to help it around, you can do that too. So remember, just keep moving it around and you'll see that red coming through. And remember, you've got that hole there, so you don't want it to come out there prematurely either. And that's where the paintbrush might come in extra handy. Just goop it on there and it'll do whatever it wants to do. Now I'm just going to flip it on that same cup and let it all run wherever it wants to run and do what it wants to do. And when it's dry, we can move on. But I think we're starting to get a little bit of that creep factor going. Here it is so far. The inside has dried. You can see the outside has all those nice crack-looking scratches with the red showing through. And it's dripped out, so we have it looking a little bit drippy here, which is good. It gives almost like a little bit of a blood feel to it. And now I'm just going to use my Super Gloss Mod Podge, and I'm going to take a brush, a thin brush, and this will dry clear, and it will dry very shiny. And it's really hard to see what I'm doing, but I'm just going to paint down the edges so they almost look like drips. And the only reason I'm doing this, so you can see it's a little more reflective, because the acrylic paint is a little bit more of a matte finish, and I want there to be a little reflection in there because I'm going to try to put a light in there. So I don't want to cover the whole thing, but you could just pour some in there and drip it all over like we did with the paint. But I think it might give it a little bit more interest if it's just in some areas. And then we'll just let that dry too. But you see how it's a little bit more reflective? And we could add glitter in there if we wanted to. And maybe we will. I'll do a very fine, this is the Glamour Dust. And I'm just going to do a very fine sprinkle in there. So it's not completely covered, but that it gets into different spots. You can shake out any excess you might have. Now it's even a little bit more reflective. So we'll just let this dry. This is painted. The glitter and Mod Podge in there has dried. So I'm going to put that aside for a minute. And now we need to deal with our skeleton man. And this guy was left over from last year from the dollar store. And I don't like this little hook on his head, so we're going to just pop that right off. Or cut it right off. And I'll just take a little sandpaper to do the rest of that little nub. There, like it was never there. Now that I've done that, I need to bend him to my will here, and he is supposed to look like he's crawling out of here. So one foot's going to be in. I want the other one to be like he's about to climb out. So, but I don't like it bending like that. I want it to be more of an actual natural bend. So I busted out my heat gun. And I'm not going to melt it. I just want to warm it up. And let's hope this works. So that's pretty good, I think. He's bent pretty well. And his knee didn't fall off, or his leg didn't fall off. So that's always a good sign. So this guy can be in the back. And then we want this to look like he's coming out. Maybe hanging down. I kind of like that better. That wasn't my initial thought. But these arms are a little bit of a problem too, so we're going to want to reposition them. So I'm going to have his leg just dangling out like this. So I need that shoulder bone to come out a little bit. So that's better. And then I'm going to stick that right back in here. Have him roughly in position, and then I'm going to have him look like he's pushing himself out here, like he's crawling out of there. That's what I'm going for. So I'm going to have to adjust this arm too, I think, and the elbow. I think the elbow needs a bend. I think he's now positioned well enough to be able to do this. And the first thing I'm going to do is I have some moss, and I have more. I have Spanish moss and other moss. Super moss. So we're just going to toss a little hot glue right in the bottom. And I'll just start with a piece of moss. Put it in. Just like that. Press it down into the hot glue. And then I'll add some more. So we got this going on, and we want it to stick out a little bit. I don't know if we're going to need the Spanish moss at all. All right, so here's our guy, 1 foot in. Like he's crawling out. We want him to be stooped forward a little bit. And this arm should be like he's like sort of, let's see, pulling himself out. All right, so I'm going to attach the hand right here. And then we can maneuver the rest of him a little bit. Now this is a project where if you have a lot of those pieces of hot glue, it's not so bad because it just looks like it's part of the project. All right, let's get his head turned around here. We've got his hand in place. And I want him to kind of tilt his head just a little bit so he's not looking quite so stiff. All right, here he is climbing out. And all we have to do now is add some other fun stuff. I have some fishing line, and I have this light, just like this. You put it in like in balloons or in vases or wherever you want to put it. You can get them all over the place. And I'm going to, and all it does is twist on and off. I'm going to tie the fishing line around here. So I gave it a little knot, and it still turns on and off, so we're good. And I'm going to hang it through the side. So I'm going to feed that in, tie that in a knot, and now you can take the light out, turn it on and turn it off, replace the battery, whatever you need to do, but it's just in there, lighting it up behind there. So you can kind of bury it in, you can shake it and kind of bury it in there, but you'll still have the light in the dark. And you don't even barely notice it right there. I have various spiders, and I thought they would make a good addition to the outside of this. So I'm just going to add some. This guy happens to have glitter on him, which makes him extra special in my book. If you can't find a good spider on its own, you can find these rings, and they just pop off, or you can cut them off if you need to. They just pop off the bottom, and I'm going to add a couple more. And you can have different sizes, different styles, different whatever you want to do. So we've got this guy hanging off the side like he just crawled out of that hole. I've got this one with some colors on there. We'll put him over here. So you got some spiders, you got your skull, and then for his hand and stuff like that, if you feel like you don't want to see any of that glue, don't sweat it, put a drop on there, and a little extra moss, and now you can't see a thing. Covers it all up. So I didn't use the Spanish moss, but the Spanish moss would have worked just as well too. I'm trying to think, I don't think there's anything else he really needs. He's got his spider friends, he's got, I mean, if you wanted to go crazy, you could put stuff in the background in there, but you don't see very much, so you don't really need to. And I'm going to take my light out, turn it on, toss it back in there, shake it around so it's hidden in the moss, but it still lights up. So all we need now is a way to hang it. And you can find those bandages. So those mummy bandages would be cute. I happen to have a nice thick black ribbon, which I think is perfect. Longer than we need, no doubt. So we'll cut that off. And now we've got this super cool Halloween decoration. And the only thing I spent money on this year was this. Everything else I had left over. I had the moss, I had the light, I had this guy left over from the candle holders from last year, the year before, and the spiders. I always have a bunch of spiders around. And then the ribbon I had also, and the paint I had, and of course I had the glitter. So be sure to let me know what you think of this guy crawling out of this little plant terrarium. And nobody else is going to have this. So this is a super fun and easy craft and super inexpensive. I hope you like the Halloween craft, and I hope you give it a try. If you let your mind wander and you start putting things together that don't normally go together, you might come up with some really fun and creative stuff to make. I will definitely see you next time, you guys. Thanks so much for being here. And remember, life is too short not to shimmer, so grab your glue gun and your glitter. Stay safe. Bye, guys.